My name is Mitch Benner, and we started this podcast to remove the stigma around sobriety from addiction.
My name is Aaron Nelson. Through our stories and the stories of our guests, we hope to help you find a new path.
We'd love to get audience interaction and engagement. We'd love to have a little section where we answer questions about things that are going on in your life currently. We can make shorts and things like that answer those that we can put out immediately. But we just would love to get some more audience engagement. And again, if you guys are in the struggle, reach out, man. We are here to help. I have connected with some guys in Denver that you want to get into anything, like any kind of career path. We can help you get into it, help you get your head straight. So, from the bottom of our hearts, we just want to say thank you. You guys are awesome. We believe in you. And thank you guys for supporting us. We are back with Shattered Darkness, episode 20. I know you don't like it when I do that, but episode 20. I just want to take a minute to say thank you to all of our listeners and all of our supporters. Obviously it's been a pretty awesome journey, and, we're building that community piece for longevity and sobriety. And I don't know, man, it's just the way this thing is growing it's been really cool. And I just want to say thank you to everybody that's listening. Today we have another awesome human being here with us. Her name is Kendra Powers. I just recently met Kendra through a friend at rehab, and honestly quickly becoming one of my favorite people. Like, she's just so supportive and super sober. So how are you doing today, Kendra?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. What does it feel like to be super sober?
Super sober.
It's super awesome, actually.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. And remind me, what's your sobriety date?
3/30/17.
Okay. 3/37. So 8 years?
Yeah. I just celebrated.
Yeah, you did, dude. Congratulations.
Thanks.
That's awesome.
That is awesome.
Did you do anything fun?
I went to several meetings and celebrated, and I actually told my story at one of the places.
Nice.
And what was cool, I think, for me this year was I didn't do the freak out like I do every year before my sobriety birthday. Usually I go into this gloom and doom every year and kind of freak out and relive a lot of stuff. And this year I had total serenity. So it was really cool.
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
Do you think that the freak out stuff is kind of like PTSD?
Oh, yeah.
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 That's weird, because I punched a window like 13 years ago, and it was probably 2 or 3 years ago that I didn't dream about it.
Yeah.
I would dream about it every year. So that's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to let you just kind of tell your story, start from the beginning, wherever you want, but really we just kind of want to hear your path.
Okay.
You ready?
I'm ready.
You're good.
My name's Kendra. I'm an alcoholic addict. I do like to say that out loud, is that it's not just drinking for me. It's also drugs. And I mean, I really am a junkie through and through. I don't care if it's food, people, places, things, whatever. If I can put more of it in my God hole, I will, right? And so even though I have years of sobriety, I continue to hit at least 3 meetings a week. I talk to a minimum of one other person in recovery every single day, because my life really does depend on it.
Yeah.
So I guess to start my story, I'm originally from Pueblo, Colorado. I grew up in a party house, right? So drugs and alcohol were prevalent. It was
With your folks?
Yeah. Your basic run of the mill, violent, abusive household, nothing major. But you grow up and, there's these people, these scientists, these doctors, whatever, and they're always talking about, well, is it nature versus nurture? And in my story, I'll never really know, right? Yeah. So this is how I was raised. You had a great day, you partied. You had a bad day, you partied. Mm-hmm. And so I grew up seeing this. Like, I can remember being 3 or 4 years old and the party's over and I'm going around and sipping up the beers that are left over. And so I'm getting ready to move from Pueblo, Colorado out to Illinois. And this is a life-changing thing for me. I'm in 5th grade. It's almost Christmas break. And I had this great idea that in order to say goodbye to all my friends down in Pueblo, I took my grandma's wine to school. Like, and you guys are a little younger, but Tupperware, like the real old Tupperware where it was like a pea green, you couldn't see through it, kind of lid.
Yeah, I actually know what you're talking about.
So I took wine to school because I was going to celebrate with my friends and tell them all goodbye. And, you know, nobody really bought into this, but, you know, at what, I was 10 years old, almost 11, almost 11. Wow. My birthday's in January, right? And so this is December, almost 11 years old. I'm thinking, this is the great idea. This is my alcoholic thinking already showing its ugly little head. And I don't think anybody else drank. And I think I had some and it was nasty and I poured it out and went about my life, right? But the thought process was already there. So we moved to Illinois, and about 6 months later, it's the summer program. You know, I'm not in school, don't have any friends, because the first day I walk in, this boy's like, slut, right? And I have never even kissed a boy. I thought I looked pretty normal. You know, what do I know? Horrible. So culture shock, max. Yeah. My dad's in a different country half the time. My mom's depressed. I'm struggling like crazy because my whole life was my best friend back in Pueblo. So we get to the summer program and I'm like, well, I have to actually go like talk to these other kids and be social. So I would take the big McDonald's cup that we had, you know, and fill it up with Kool-Aid or soda and then put my dad's gin or vodka in there. He always had clear liquor in the cabinet. And I'm like, he drank so much. How is he going to notice how much I'm stealing or taking?
Did you know at this time, like, this is probably not a good, I mean, you're 10, 11 years old. I mean, and I get the fact that this is what you've seen, right? Like, this is just normal for you. So I'm just wondering, like, in your brain at that time, are you like knowing that this is like something you shouldn't do?
I don't remember. Yeah. I think I remember knowing I shouldn't have gotten caught.
But right? You also probably knew there was going to be no consequences or.
Yeah. I mean, the consequences were probably going to be pretty severe. Yeah. So I had some really bad shit happen. It was not just a grounding when I got in trouble. Let's just put it that way. Okay. But I also didn't give a shit either, right? I was already at that point in my life where I really just didn't care. You want to beat the shit out of me? Go ahead, beat the shit out of me. It is what it is. Jesus. But I needed something to mute life, right? And I don't remember ever really getting drunk, but I do remember doing it quite a few times throughout the summer. Yeah. Never got caught. Yeah, I don't know. So that was pretty much the start of it. I was 11 and a half. A new girl moved in down the road, I guess within a year or two of this going on. And her dad also drank. And we thought it would be a grand idea to knock the neck off the whiskey bottle. One of those big old whiskey bottles too. And I remember coming home and, oh, Mom, I got the flu. I'm so sick, you know, and I'm puking. And well, she liked to eavesdrop on my phone calls. So the next day I ended up getting caught up and I got in trouble. I got grounded. And even though I was as sick as I possibly could be, I was ready to do it again. Right. Yeah. It was on and running. By the time I was 14, I was in the ghetto having two identical twin midget prostitutes score my booze for me. Wow. Right. I'm like this little white girl and I'm hanging out with all these black dudes and we're in the ghetto and these women worked the corner. And so if you gave them money to buy their own stuff, they would buy yours and theirs. You would just kind of walk in with them. And if they weren't working, there was usually a bum on the corner that would do it for you. I couldn't even remember the name of the place. But I thought it was, I had arrived, right? Yeah, wow. I got cigarettes, I got booze, I'm doing all the things, I'm on the run. And during this little runaway trip is when I try weed for the first time. And, you know, somebody's sister was playing her guitar and I'm in La La Land on some grassy hill in my head and flowers are blooming, you know, I'm like, this is the greatest thing in the world. Until the cops come that morning and I could hear them beating on the door and I knew they were there for me. So my parents sent me back out here to Colorado because they're like, you know, oh my God, you know, what do you want? And I'm like, well, I hate Illinois and it's horrible and I hate life. And so they let me come back out to Colorado at 14 years old, right? But I just came out here and I was doing the same thing, right? I can find those people that are drinking. I can find those people that are drugging. It's not an issue.
Did your parents come with you?
No.
So they just sent you out here by yourself?
I was supposed to stay with Grandma and Grandpa. Okay. So Grandma and Grandpa knew that I was allergic to cats. So when I would come back high and drunk, I would say, "Oh, Joanne's the cats." Yeah. You know, wow. That's when my eyes are.
I used that one too.
Right. And my grandma drank a little bit. I don't think my grandpa ever even had a beer his entire life. He
Same with my grandpa, 95. Dude. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I don't know if they knew or if they didn't know, but I played it for as long as I could.
Yeah.
And then I bounced to another grandma's house for a little bit because, these grandparents wanted me to go to church on Saturday or Sunday morning. Well, I was hungover. I couldn't make it to church. So I, a night here and living with friends, and I was already bouncing around, basically homeless at points.
14 years old.
Yeah, at 14, 15 years old. So my parents are kind of catching wind of what's going on out here. And so I was supposed to be seeing a therapist through all of this. And so the trick is, well, we need to go see your therapist tonight. I end up in handcuffs and getting put into the crazy ward in the hospital down in Pueblo. And it's for depression. Right. So I had not done anything to where anybody could catch me and actually have me arrested for drinking and drugging. So they used a backdoor method and basically detained me, put me in the psych ward for a couple of days, put me on an airplane, and then shipped me back to Illinois and put me into rehab.
Jesus.
So at 15 years old, I'm in rehab instead of starting my sophomore year of school.
Yeah.
And so now I'm introduced to people who are doing crack and coke and meth and all this stuff that I had never really ever seen or heard of, because now I'm back towards Chicago.
Yeah.
Right. So we're in the big things. And here I am through the whole thing thinking, pot calling the kettle black. My parents were the ones that, taught me how to drink and smoke weed and do all these things.
Were they still doing all of this at this time?
Drinking and smoking weed, yes. Like, I don't think they had done coke since I was like 3.
Okay. Were they just big party people? Like,
yeah, they're in the 70s, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s. It's,
free whatever.
I'm sure there was some Leave It to Beaver households, but I think for the most part back in that age, most people did party to some extent.
Yeah.
I cannot call someone an alcoholic or an addict, right? They have to do that on their own. But
I feel you.
Sure, I'm pretty sure it might have fell down the family tree a little bit.
Yeah.
I do know my mom was the child of an alcoholic. My grandpa died an alcoholic death. My dad, though, he had some tendencies.
Yeah.
So the one person who I never wanted to be is the one person who I pretty much became.
Yeah. It's funny how that happens, right?
Yeah.
But, sorry, I was just curious about your parents a little bit and just kind of, their role in all of this, because it's kind of strange.
It was okay for them, but it wasn't
okay for you. Yeah.
And now that I'm a parent, I can kind of see that, right? Like, I have raised my children in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous.
And let me ask you a question, because I have two, and that's the thing. It's like, what do you tell your kids in that? Because there are those habits that you've created that are bad that you don't want your kids to do.
Yeah.
Right. Like smoking is one of mine. And my kids are getting to the point where they're asking me about it, and so it's, what do you, I'm just curious what you would tell your kids, or do you just stop and set the example? You know what I mean?
Both. So, 11 years ago, I quit smoking cigarettes. So my 2 older kids were in that preschool daycare age range. And so they were learning that cigarettes were bad for you. And their mom, oh my goodness, this is what we're learning. And I did. I stopped smoking for like 9 years.
Yeah.
I had stopped cussing for several years as well.
Yeah.
Oh, that's gone.
I'm going through both those right now.
Yeah. My 2-year-old daughter is saying fuck and won't say I love you.
Exactly.
Oh boy.
That's my 4-year-old son.
First one's okay. Second one.
Sorry,
okay.
babe.
Yeah. So, I did try to stop a lot of the things. Some of them came back throughout the years because I could only stifle myself for so long, right?
Yeah.
I am who I am. They're old enough. My 2 older ones are teens and the youngest is almost 10. So I'm honest with them.
Yeah.
They know a lot about my story.
Yeah.
They know a lot about
Do you think that's been helpful?
Yes. Yes and no.
Yeah.
Because my daughter gives me, I'm not you, mom. I'll never be you, mom. Quit treating me like I'm you, mom.
Yeah.
Right? Which makes me feel really bad. But then she'll go and do some stupid shit. And I'm like,
you are me. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You need to listen.
Because my parents just said no.
No.
And nothing else.
No explanation.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
And so with my kids, here's my mugshot.
Right.
This is what happened to me.
Yeah.
Like, I was a homeless junkie living on the streets. Like, I was facing prison. is this really what you want? Because this is what happens. And they know a lot of people in the rooms of recovery because I don't really hang out with anybody else. So I think they're aware, and so far 15 and 14 years old, and they haven't drank and drugged yet. I'm saying I win so far.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. And that's, that's great because I get that question a lot. Like, if I'm going to let my kids drink, and I'm like, yeah, like I'm not going to be the kind of parent that's like, put my foot down, but I will, tell like, hey, these are all the things that can happen.
Yeah.
Yes, you can have a great time. Okay. And you could make friendships and create relationships. That's great. But all of this other stuff can happen if you go too far.
Yeah.
And so it's like, find that balance in all of it, and because my parents were the same way. It was just like, no explanation why, and I thought like I had a good head on my shoulders when I was a teenager. My crazy shit didn't really start till I was later, like in my 20s.
Yeah.
But anyways, I was just curious kind of, because that always seems to have a really big impact on the choices that we make, So anyways, yeah, keep going.
All right. So rehab, I guess. So yeah, my parents were not healthy people, right? I mean, they tried and they were decent people. They just were not healthy. I don't think they ever were given the tools. Yeah. Right. So it was always the pot calling the kettle black. Yeah. They continued to drink and smoke weed and do whatever. And they stopped partying when we moved to Illinois because they really didn't have any friends. But they continued on their own. And it was for me to not do it and for them to do it. And there was a lot of, physical abuse and stuff like that, whether I watched it or received it. And, life was just hard at home. Right. And I didn't want to be there. You were talking about you thought you had a great head on your shoulders as a teen. I thought I knew everything.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Like, I don't need you. I already moved to another state. I was fine without you.
Right.
I mean, I was jumping couch to couch, but whatever.
You're surviving.
Yeah. I was, I was trying to get a job and do the things. But when I went back to Illinois, I came out of rehab and I started my sophomore year of high school, and they had moved from the big city down to something kind of like a Windsor here, right? It's this small, kind of richier town.
Little suburb.
I'm thinking, what am I supposed to do? Cow tip for fun? Right? And so I'm terrified. All I see is corn. So I show up for my first day of school out of rehab. So I'm late for the school year, and I'm wearing a khaki colored Dickie suit with black lip liner and like my little chola bang going on and a boto, and I'm going to fuck you up. And right. Like I was this ghetto hardcore gangster kid in Rockford. And then in Colorado, it was mostly Hispanic. So you take either one of those aspects and that's all you saw.
Yeah.
Like, I looked like this little cute white girl, but I was this mean, feral little fucking gremlin thing, right? And they put me
such a great description.
I know. And they put me in this little cutesy school. And like the kids were fucking terrified, as they should be though.
Yeah.
Like I was at that point in my life where fear was the same thing as respect. And if you didn't respect me, you could fear me.
Yeah.
And that was fine with me. And they did, right? For the most part, everybody left me the fuck alone.
Yeah.
And I stayed okay for a while and met some people and started making friends. And I even got myself a boyfriend, and he was pretty cool. He drank a little bit, didn't really smoke any weed, but he had this older brother that had the hookups. So sooner or later, I started drinking and smoking weed again and started doing all my shit.
Yeah.
And, I ran away again, and I ended up in an argument with my parents when I got picked up for runaway the next morning. I'm telling my dad, I just want to go to school. I got driver's ed. I want my license, and we're face to face. And I end up calling the cops because I'm like, I don't want to fight with you. Like, I don't want this to go down today. I just came home from the cop shop yesterday. Like, I just want to go to school. We fucking hate each other. Cool. Well, when the cops show up, he told them that I punched him in the face. And so I was in my room and my door was locked and I'm trying to get dressed. I'm trying to go to school. And the cops kick in my bedroom door and they go to tackle me. And I have no idea why they want me. Like, I didn't do anything, right? And so here I am basically getting hogtied, and I'm kicking and screaming and punching the cops. And so I catch a felony. And at 16 years old, it was, I think it was a day after my 16th birthday or 2 days after my 16th birthday, I'm catching myself a felony. I'm going to juvenile prison, just because me and my parents can't cohabitate and communicate, right? So I do my time. I go to an unlocked facility. Everything's fine. You know, obviously I'm not drinking. I'm not drugging. I get off of paper, back at it. And now I'm 17 and fuck everybody. Yeah. Right. So at 17 years old, I can live on my own.
How long were you in jail?
I think 9. I was in prison for a couple months, and then I got to go to this unlocked facility. Yeah. And it's like this farmhouse in the middle of nowhere, and you do chores. You go to school year round. It wasn't a bad gig. There was some little 11-year-old kid in there for a felony for stealing checks out of somebody's mailbox, and like, yeah.
Creative little kids, huh?
I know. And I'm like, you're 11? I never even thought of this stuff. Yeah. So, like, along the way, as I'm supposed to be getting punishment, I'm like learning all these cool criminal tools.
Absolutely, dude. That's what I've said that so many times. Like, the best. I went to, when I was 23, got a DUI, and I've learned about synthetic marijuana and like all these different kinds of ways to skirt the system, you know?
Yeah. So, 17 years old. Partying, living on my own. 18 years old, partying, doing my thing. You know, I'm either going to work or maintaining my school, or, you know, I'm always a functional alcoholic addict. Yeah. I eventually find, ecstasy, and I date the ecstasy dealer for the whole town. I do all the raves. I do all the exotics, right? Like, I'm trying all the things, but they're all fun, and I'm having a great time. All while saying in the back of my head, you know, I'll never smoke crack. I'll never use a needle. Coke comes in there somewhere because I'm working at a bar. And, you know, I call my mom. I'm freaking out. And she goes, you just need to go to bed. You'll be okay. Wow. You know, like, fuck, Kendra, you fucked up. But it is what it is. Yeah.
How are you getting alcohol?
Like, I always had somebody. I either had a fake ID. Shit, at 17, 18. No, I was 18. I had a fake ID.
Oh, yeah. I didn't know if you had brought those midget prostitutes with you in a suitcase.
No, there was always. I was a chick. There was always somebody.
Yeah, exactly.
Always easy to get it.
There was always somebody. Yeah. Right. And if I couldn't do it on my own, there was always somebody that's going to do it for me. And I always hung out with older people.
Yeah.
Were you working at the bar till at 18?
18, at 17, I was in the bar, and the guy offers me a job, the owner, and I was like, "What? So I
here's
got
the
fake
thing.
ID," and he's like, "Well, when do you turn 18?" I'm like, "In 2 weeks." He's like, "Get the fuck out of my bar until you turn 18, and then come work for me."
That's crazy.
I'm like, all right, cool. You know, so I'm going to school, and I'm working as a dairy manager. You know, because I was supposed to have a job during school hours so that I could graduate, because they just didn't want me in the fucking school anymore. Mm-hmm. And I'm working at the bar. I'm working at UPS. Like, I'm hustling, right? I'm doing all these things. I'm taking naps in the dairy refrigerator on top of the milk coolers. Wow. And, you know, because I'm not sleeping, but I'm having a great time. You know, breaking up bar fights and just doing all the shit. But it looks good on the outside.
Yeah.
You know, I'm living on my own. I'm paying my own bills. You know, I'm fine. I'm a grown up. I got this. Ooh, dirty words. I got this.
Yep.
But shit just keeps on going down and going down. And somewhere around 19 years old, you know, I kind of move away from the exotics, and I start dating this guy. And he's like, hey, you know, every once in a while, I have a buddy who goes to Chicago and picks up heroin. I'm like, oh my God, no, heroin's terrible. It's horrible. And he's like, no. He's like, you don't have to shoot it up. He's like, it's this white powder, and just sometimes, you know, we don't even do it all the time, and you just snort it, and it just mellows you out. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? You're not like just instantly an addict? He's like, no, not at all. And he was telling the truth.
Yeah.
You know, for a couple of years, we would occasionally snort some heroin, right? And, you know, the drinking and the smoking the weed, and most of the exotics are gone. And finally I meet this guy, and he's a really nice guy, because he'll call you or stop by your house to see if you're okay and if you want anything. So I wake up right before Christmas one year. It was right before 2001. So December right before 2001. I remember Y2K. And I feel horrible. And I can't get out of bed. And I'm sweating. And I'm cold. And I'm shaking. And I realize I got a fucking dope habit somewhere along the lines because that dude was so nice.
You got addicted.
I got addicted to heroin.
You started to get dope sick?
Yep. It was my first bout of dope sickness, and it was right before Christmas. And I looked at the guy I was dating, and he's like, either we lay here and be sick, or we call that dude, and we do just enough to get our sick off and enjoy Christmas. So that's what we did. And that set the ball rolling.
Yeah. Right?
So from the age of 20 to 25, I was basically a homeless heroin addict. I was doing heroin, eventually shooting up, smoking crack, squatting in a house for a few years that was all boarded up, stayed in roach motels.
The whole fucking
thing. I remember I went to jail 5 times in 4 months on like the same fucking warrant because I'd be too dope sick to get up and go. I was a stripper because that was the only thing I could do to maintain. I'd go in there, I'd do a couple of lap dances in a stage, make $100, roll out,
get some drugs,
just for the drugs.
Yeah. I mean, it's like a movie almost, really.
Oh God, I always say my life should be an after school special. Yeah, like my life story. I even had one of my therapists is like, she's like, you should do a book. I'm like, you got all the info.
Yeah, right. Like, let's go.
So yeah, all the things that I said were never going to happen happened, right? Those yets that we talk about in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, they fucking happen. Yeah. And you don't ever see it coming. And even if you do see it coming,
it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. It's like a train. You can't stop it.
We'll go back real quick. What do you mean by the yets for people that don't quite understand?
So I haven't had a DUI yet. You know,
I'm not drinking in my car by myself yet.
Yeah. Right. I don't have to wake up in the morning yet. I don't have the shakes.
I haven't lost my family yet.
Yeah. Like all the horrible things that can happen. Like we have these high bottom alcoholics in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous that just drank too much and they didn't like how it made them feel. And so they come in and they get sober, right? I wish I would have been one of those people. So they didn't see all the yets or the young ones that come in. Bless their hearts, you know. I went to rehab at 15, didn't stick. But some of them, it does stick, and they don't see any of the stuff. They don't go to jail. They don't have the DUIs. Well, they also never had a car, and they didn't lose a husband because they never had one. And so those are the yets.
Yeah, nice.
So, can I ask you a question? In all of this, do you think you were running away from something?
Absolutely.
The pain of, you know, whatever, your upbringing, things like that. Have you identified what that thing was?
Yeah, I've actually done extensive therapy, EMDR therapy. If nobody's done it, do it. Oh my God, lifesaver. Yeah, I don't punch people in the face anymore.
Thank God.
I don't go to jail anymore.
We're not going to walk out of here with black eyes today.
I'm not going to red hair. I don't have night terrors anymore.
Tell us a little bit about that EMDR, if you don't mind.
So EMDR therapy was actually, it was made or designed, whatever, for military, right? Mm-hmm. So they come back from war and they are just holy shit beyond belief, right? And can't function in society. A lot of little things trigger them. So EMDR therapy is basically connecting the right brain and the left brain together so that you have thoughts and emotions. So my therapist was like, okay, so here are your... this is your thoughts, right? And these are your emotions. And when you have PTSD, your emotions choke out your thought process. And so doing EMDR therapy connects them back together again so that you can have real thoughts and real emotions and move through them.
And process them correctly.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So huge difference.
Yeah. I did a little bit of that through outpatient rehab and it was really helpful.
Yeah. I'd have to say it goes back to my childhood.
Yeah.
Right. Like, it wasn't the worst. I've heard of worse by far. But it wasn't the best. And then if it wasn't from my childhood, it was self-induced.
Right.
Like I've been beaten, raped, robbed, shot at, stabbed, in abusive relationships, being homeless, having ADHD, not having all these sensory issues and never knowing what they are until you're like 40 some odd years old.
Yeah.
Right? Like there's all these things that added up that made it a whole ball of wax that I had to heal from.
Yeah. Gosh, that's crazy, man. So you're about 25 years old and addicted to heroin, crack, doing stripping, living on the street. Yeah. Where do you go from there?
Back to jail. Yeah. I actually have a lot of my mug shots. And it's sad. I use them as a tool, as a sponsor, to show my girls of those yets.
Yeah.
So one of the last times that I went to jail as a heroin addict and a crackhead, I weighed 90 pounds.
Jesus.
I normally run around 140, 150. I'm about 150 right now. 90 pounds, soaking wet. And I have, these pox all marks, over me, right? And I remember hearing this guy say, "Stay away from her. She has AIDS," right? Because I just looked so ghastly. I looked like I was dying. So that last little stint in jail, like I was there I think 3 weeks or something like that. And so I'm able to start like having real thoughts.
Yeah.
My brain started to work. But I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, I wasn't raised this way, right? I may not have been raised all prim and proper, but I was not raised to be a homeless junkie, right? Running the streets. And I even write an apology letter to the last cop that picked me up. Or no, it was a thank you letter. Thank you for arresting me. And I'm getting ready to go back to the house I was squatting in. After having a couple of weeks of thinking about, this is not how I want to live my life. I don't want to be a junkie anymore. I don't want to do this. And I get home and that same guy that I had been with hands me a crack pipe and a loaded needle. It was fucking party. Yeah. And he had sold my washer and dryer that my grandpa had bought me, so that he could maintain his drug habit while I was in jail. And I overdosed again. Couple of years before that, I had overdosed to the point where I was blue, foaming at the mouth.
Jeez.
Hence the cockroach tattoo. But yeah, I fall out and I bash my head and I kind of roll back too, and I'm like, fuck, what am I doing? And we go out to score dope a couple weeks later and come back, and the sheriffs had come onto the house that we were squatting in for all those years, and was just pulling all of our stuff out of there. And we were like hoarders at this point, right? Because we would take our trash and bring it back in the house and dump it out and look for rigs so that you could reuse. So there's just shit everywhere. And we're in the ghetto, so you could see like all these little people. It looked like ants just like taking stuff away and scattering everywhere. And we just got done getting high, so I can't walk up on the house and be like, "Hey, what are you doing?"
Yeah.
Right. And so we kind of wait till everything's done. And his mom was willing to take us. And so we moved a couple hours away to a different town where it was much harder to get stuff. And so I start to pull away from that whole situation, right? We're still getting some booze and some weed here and there. And every once in a great while, we'll get some heroin or something like that. But I'm thinking, this is dumb. I don't love this dude. I don't want to be here. I can't do this. And I finally grab a big old black garbage bag full of clothes and I take off. And I go stay at somebody else's house, and then I find some other guy to hook up with, and things get crazy, and I'm back in jail, and it's DV, and I got this big old black eye. I got raped. I got thrown out of a moving vehicle, and I'm calling my parents, and I'm like, please, man, just help me get back on my feet. And they said no. Hung up the phone, and I was like, fuck, I actually want to this time. I'm actually ready. And I floundered for a few more weeks, and I called him back again. And I'm like, please, I am begging you. I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to live like this. Please help me. And they're like, we'll give you 90 days in our house to get your shit together and get the fuck out. I'm like, all right, cool. I'm ready. I'm sitting here. I'm at the payphone, a couple hours away. I'll start walking. I don't even care, right? And they did. They let me back into their house, and I got a job. And I think they gave me about 30 to 45 days. And they're like, all right, you're done. And I'm like, whoa. You said 90 days.
I'm only halfway there.
And they're like, no, you're still drinking. And I was, I was going out and I was drinking and I was partying, but I was like, I'm not doing heroin and crack. Right. Come on, but I found somebody that was willing to rent me a trailer and I could pay week to week. And I slowly started to get back on my feet for the most part. But so the drugs are starting to go by the wayside, but the alcohol comes back in, right? It's always that insidious alcohol. Yeah. That's where it started and that's where it ends. And so I spent the last, couple of years drinking, smoke a little bit of weed, every once in a while doing something else, but mostly maintaining life, staying out of trouble for the most part. Around 28 years old, I get a pretty good job and I'm going in and they can still smell the alcohol on me. I'm still probably drunk and, some of the guys are trying to help me because I work in manufacturing most of my life, right? Yeah. So it's like one chick and all these dudes and they're like these dads and brothers and they're like, you fucking stink. And I'm like, but I meet who is going to be my first husband, right? And we had this lovely, abusive, alcoholic relationship where we beat the shit out of each other and got drunk and I got knocked up twice, lost both of those babies. One of the babies was 5 months along, so I actually had to deliver. Oh my God. Add to the PTSD. Yeah, right? For real. It was just an absolute shit show, but I bought my first house in that time frame and so like I'm progressing as an adult to some extent, but I'm also progressing in my bullshit. Right. Right. Mostly staying away from jail. He goes to jail. I come somehow kind of stay out of it. And I ended up having my older two kids. Right. And so I cannot drink for 9 months while I'm pregnant. Yeah. I did smoke a little weed or I like lick the rim of his Corona with the lime on it because I'm just like fiending for the whole 9 months. And I'm able to kind of mostly make it through. And my second kid comes along and the alcoholism's a little bit worse. So, I'm like, okay, I just breastfed. I can have half a beer. And then, I have 7 hours to get that out of my system. And so I'm calculating. Yeah. I'm doing the obsessive calculating, and there's a bottle in the freezer just waiting for me, calling my name. The cops call me up and they're like, yeah, this is so-and-so from this county. And I'm like, I know what this is. This is that rape case because I was a cold case file, right? They didn't have DNA back then. And so they're like, we know who raped you. We know how they raped you. We know where they're at. Do you want to go after them? I'm like, yeah. And it brings back all this stuff. So I have postpartum, right? For the second time with the second kid. My husband is basically MIA. He's still out drinking and drugging and doing all this stuff. My life looks good, but it's falling apart mentally. And my alcoholism just starts to fucking spiral. I finally look at him and I'm like, hey man, let's get some help. Let's get sober. Let's be adults. Let's be parents. Let's do this. And he tells me, no. And I said, house is mine. There's the fucking door. And within about 6-8 months, I finally got sober. I know it took me 4 months in the actual rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous to be able to stop drinking, stop smoking weed. My last drunk was 4/20/2013. I woke up that morning, pissed at the world, pissed at him, was in and out of a blackout and ended up at a noon meeting on foot because I ditched my car because I'm pretty sure the cops were after me. I think I might have threatened suicide, but I don't remember trying to do anything. Again, in and out of a blackout, right? Yeah. Wow. But I knew where to go. I went to a fucking noon meeting, drunk. Sorry, guys that were there. But I knew that I needed help. And I'm in the paddy wagon. I'm trying to headbutt my way out of it, you know. And I could hear this guy who was my favorite guy, and he's telling the cops she's actually really trying. She's got a shit hand, you know. She's got these two beautiful kids. She brings them to the meetings all the time. Can you just cut her a break? And so they actually sent me to the hospital instead of jail for the first time ever, right? And I'm blown away. I'm like, wow, still cuffed to the gurney, got a spit hood on because I'm an asshole. But you know, this nurse is like, if you don't quit fighting, I'm going to put you out. She's got a needle full of Halidol. And I'm like, so I fight as hard as I can fucking fight. And I'm just ripping and tearing. And she comes at me with that needle and hits me. And I go, thank you. And that's the last thing I remember. And I come to the next morning in my house. And I don't know where my parents were, but I do know they were at the hospital. I don't know where my kids are, but I do know I had them at some point the day before. I don't know what clothes I'm wearing. I don't know how I got home. I don't know anything. And I drop to my knees and I pray to a God that I absolutely do not believe in. God, please help me. And that was the last time I had a drink. And I really started working the program because I understood finally that I was an alcoholic. Because I didn't think I was an alcoholic. I just thought it was it was the cop's fault. And it was my dad's fault. And it was my ex-husband's fault.
Stuff that happened to you.
Everybody else's fault, right?
Yeah.
It was not mine. I was just living life. I was just dealing. And so after coming in and listening and watching myself stumble and fall, I'm like, oh, I can't do that controlled drinking thing, right? That doesn't work for me. And I end up screwing up, or no, I think I screwed up before that. I was looking at a prison term. I had kicked another cop. I tried to drive my children while I was in a blackout. And so they charged me with child endangerment. And I'm telling the DA, I'm like, look, I got a job. I got a house. I'm not a flight risk. I got these kids. I'll give you whatever money you want. I'll do anything you want. And she looks at me and she goes, you're habitual on all your charges. I don't want your money. You're going to prison. And I'm like, oh, fuck, dude, you know? And the last day I went to court, I was supposed to be given my, they set your time when you're going to prison and for how long. And that one DA that had a hard on for me got moved to a different courtroom that morning. And I got some dude that was brand new and had no idea what the fuck was going on. And he goes, misdemeanor. And I ran. And I got a job and I came out here to Colorado with my two kids. The divorce was finalized. I was sober. I had my shit together. I had a good job waiting for me out here. I wasn't going to be around all the people, places, things that I had used and done. And I was ready for a new life. And before I moved, I found 2 meetings that were going to be close to my house, so that as soon as I moved, I had somewhere to go. Somewhere where people were going to help me raise my kids, somewhere where I was going to have a new life, somewhere where I was going to make my kids' life better. They were not going to see the abuse of me and their dad beating the crap out of each other, or me screaming at them, or me bringing some random guy home, or me passed out in the middle of the living room floor while they're eating Cheerios off the kitchen table because I couldn't function. I was done and I was ready, for the most part. Right? So I came into the rooms and I did the work and I had the sponsors and I went to the meetings. And I did okay. I mean, I was kind of dry. I didn't have the God thing for several years. And I was still an asshole and I was still a control freak. And so it wasn't like an instant pink cloud, happy, lolly dolly. I fought everything tooth and nail. But at least things were better than they were. And then right around what should have been 3 years into sobriety, I was dating this guy and he was a tweaker and he couldn't stay sober and he's beating the shit out of me. And right back to the same old things that I was doing back in the day. Only I'm sober. Yeah. And my kids are old enough to see this and know what's going on. And so that PTSD is getting real bad. I decided maybe I should just smoke some weed. Since I'm in AA, if I just smoke weed and woosah myself, right, that things will be okay and I'll be able to handle everything. And it doesn't work out. I end up going to jail. He said that I hit him with a hammer. In the meantime, this guy's got a gun to my fucking face, right? And he's got, I don't know how many different felonies. And I'm like, if I would have hit him with a hammer, he would be covered in blood, first of all. And then, well, you're the one with the arrest history. You're the one with all the DV charges. This guy doesn't even have a record. You do. You're going to jail. And so I was like, I fucking threw everything away. I thought I had thrown my entire sobriety away. And my sponsor at the time was like, hold on. Did you forget everything that you learned? And I'm like, well, no. She goes, then you didn't lose anything. All you did was restart your date. And I was like, okay, I think I can do this, right? And so for me, like, I really think I needed the relapse to reset my focus
totally
on what I wanted in sobriety.
That's exactly. I relapsed twice, but the last time was in July, and I'm grateful that it happened because I've said so many times it put a lot of this stuff into perspective. And I remember my wife asking me, like, "Dude, you had 8 months. Why did you do that?" And it was just like, because I'm an alcoholic.
Yeah.
I've spent 20 years dealing with my issues with alcohol. I think the better question is how can we make that longer? And it's like, it just made me realize, like, this is something I'm always going to battle.
Yeah.
And we're not asking the right questions. And it sparked a lot of this, where it was just like, okay, we need to talk more about this and get some clear understanding because there's a lot of confusion around it. And even from our perspective as the alcoholic, because I was looking at it too, like, shit, why did I do that? But it's obvious why I did it. I think the question lies in after that, like, how do we get that longevity even farther? And that's, I think, the community piece, being connected to it constantly.
Yeah.
Every day is the only thing that I've found that works.
Right. And that's one thing I didn't do in the beginning, the first few years.
Yeah.
I did not use the phone. Right. I went to the meetings and I left pretty quickly. I didn't go to the parties.
Kind of had this pride thing, like,
oh yeah, I'm better than you guys. Fuck you guys.
Yeah.
Right. Or I was so codependent with my kids.
Right.
Was the other part of that, is that, my kids. Right. Like, that was my excuse for everything.
Yeah.
And somebody called me out a few years ago and they're like, aren't your kids like, teenagers or something? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, so they can watch themselves for a few hours, right? And I'm like, oh,
you're like, no.
So, that reset, like, that's when I did my EMDR therapy.
Yeah.
That's when I started getting down to the real root. Like, I love Alcoholics Anonymous, and I would not be here today if it was not for Alcoholics Anonymous. And I will continue to need Alcoholics Anonymous for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
But I also needed outside help.
Yeah.
I needed a lot of outside help, and I needed that community. And today, like, I have that, and that was and I needed the higher power.
Yeah.
Right. And it, I had the doorknob as my higher power, and, all the things. And I remember somebody telling me, okay, well, you've been, shot at, beaten, raped, robbed, all these things. Did you keep yourself alive? And I was like, well, no. And they're like, well, so then you're not God. And I'm like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Right. But I really started to sit down and think about, what is my higher power? What do I want my higher power to be? Where do I feel, the best, right? Where, and for me, a lot of it is just being a good human being. Like, I stole my neighbor's lawnmower off the front porch and took it to the pawn shop, right? Like, so being a good person is not doing those things, right? Yeah. Not punching people in the face, not consuming drugs and alcohol, being honest, putting your shopping cart away, smiling at people out in the regular world, complimenting them on their shoes, their hair, their face, their eyes, their whatever.
It's crazy how people respond to that.
They do. And it warms my little heart,
Absolutely.
Just to make somebody else happy, to get out of myself. Ooh, my big self, right? But I do it to see, just to give back. Yeah. Right.
My number one prayer every day is, God, use my words to impact people in a good way.
Yeah.
Because words are so powerful, and it's just, and we're constantly surrounded by negativity, and so that's why I just, like, and I told my wife, I'm like, I am like a ninja when it comes to negativity, man. Like I'm like, I will not allow that in my life at all. And it's crazy to see how people respond to it, you know, and the access that you end up getting to people's life. You know, when you really sit down and you're honest and you lead with vulnerability. I mean, I just started a new job and I've got these kids that are coming up to me and telling me all about their life, you know, and that's a really cool opportunity to speak into somebody's life in a positive way, you know, and you're right. That lights me up, you know, it's why we are doing this podcast, because there's so much darkness in this addiction and all of this, but the 20 people that we've brought into this room and interviewed, in my opinion, are some of the most powerful people I've ever met, you know, because they can grab onto the negative and be like, nope, I'm not going to allow this to be a part of my life. I'm going to change it to a positive. And dude, that is an insanely hard thing to do in any situation.
I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that a lot of us in the rooms are empaths, right? We have so much empathy because we've been there, done that, right? But we also have like this, I don't know, this other sense about us.
I agree.
To where, and I don't even say like I'm a negative ninja. I like that though. But I feel like I have this, I'm a beacon of light.
Yes.
When I'm on my shit, when I am spiritually fit, emotionally fit, physically fit, I have this beacon of light that I can emit, right? And it attracts like moth to a flame, right? And so people know just somehow that like I'm a safe person that they can come talk to. And I talk to people about recovery. It doesn't matter where I'm at in the world, right?
Let me ask you this. When did that transition start for you? Like, when did you realize like, oh my God, like this is an insanely awesome purpose in my life? And when did you realize that you're like sold out to it?
At 18, I knew my purpose in this world was to help other people, right? I thought I was supposed to be a nurse. I became a junkie instead. Didn't pan out, right? But then I think around what should have been year 5 into my recovery journey is when I started noticing that I could help people still, but in a completely different way. And it's sometimes it's just chairing meetings, sometimes it's sponsorships, sometimes it's just talking to a random, you know, there's a lot of different ways, but I know and saw that I have this connection with people and that they, for some reason, feel really comfortable with my squirrely, kooky ass.
Well, it's authentic.
Yeah, I am. I'm honest as fuck.
And that's amazing, you know, and that's something that I think it's crazy. I think about, and I'm not dogging on my parents or anything, but I was always told like, dude, you got to keep some of that shit to yourself.
Yeah.
You know, and it was just like, I was like, why? You know, like it's who I am. And it's weird, dude. Like you start to hide that shit and then it gets confusing. You know, you start to get confused in your soul about who you really are and all these kinds of things. And it was just like, and I process my thoughts externally, right? Like I have to talk through it with somebody. And I don't know. It's just, that's the one thing I think that drew me to you the most was your authenticity, you know? And that's what I always try to go for too with all of this is like, that's what we're trying to do is lead with vulnerability, authenticity, right? Like this is who I am. This is the brokenness that I experienced, but it doesn't define me.
Right.
I think that goes back to the dealing with your shit to move on from it.
Yeah.
You know, you can't pack it in there. It's just not going to work.
Yeah. And then it's, you know, it's crazy too. Like you find a purpose in all of it.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that that's really where God lives, you know, is finding that purpose in your pain.
Yeah.
You know,
absolutely. Well, when we first sat down, right, I said, you talked about me being too quiet. And I said, well, give me a minute. Give me a minute.
Yeah, right.
And so my mom still to this day will tell me, you know, put a cover on that. Right. You know?
Box it up a little bit.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's a bit much. You know, I've been told so many times that you're too much, Kendra. You're too much. Fucking goddamn right, I'm too much, right? And so I told you I would get animated and I would get louder and I would get amped up. And that's when my authenticity is shining through me because there's a point where like I can't hold it in anymore, that I have to let it out.
Yeah.
Like how many years and decades was I told that, you know, I would morph from like, you know, a hippie to a cowboy to a gangster to I morphed through life and all these things. And that's because I was just trying to fit in somebody else's box.
Right.
And coming into recovery and learning how to love myself. Ooh, I think that was the huge key, was learning to love myself, that I am okay with who I am today, no matter how squirrely, kooky, whatever, loud, rambunctious, too much. I love life. I love recovery. My hyperfixation is people.
Yeah.
I like to learn about people. I like to help people. And I like to see the lights come on.
Yeah.
And it's not just, the drunken junkie with the light that pops on when they get clean, but even just like normal people out in the world, when they hear something that comes out of my mouth and they're like,
oh, dang,
I can do that.
Yeah.
Like, that's real.
Dude, and that's the great thing about this, is these principles that we're learned, like that we're talking about, or you can apply to anything.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah.
And you use them in any aspect of life. And dude, that's why I've always said, like, getting sober, it's like a superpower.
Yeah.
What about this, man? There's something that came to me. It seemed, based off of what you said, I think I felt like I hated myself so much that once I just want to start loving myself, I guess. I don't know how to articulate it.
No,
but
I get that.
Right? Because as I'm sitting here listening, I'm thinking about your teenagers and what you said about letting your kids drink and all that. I worry with my son, just sort of like, video games, for an example, like when it's time to turn him off, he's like, hey, I'm going to take that crack pipe away from you, bud. Give me that.
Yeah.
So I know it's from me and it's from my family history and all that. Now, all we have to do is really teach people to love themselves. Middle school is tough. High school is tough. And you don't love yourself. You kind of chameleon to all these other different people and groups to be accepted. Mm-hmm. What if we just loved ourselves? What if you taught your kid to love himself first, so he doesn't want to put that poison in his body because he loves himself too much?
Yeah.
That's where I'm going. Like, I love my life now. I love everything that I've done, and there's no way I'm setting myself back.
Yeah.
And it's of course not easy to do, but
dude, and that's the thing, is like, we can't control all that. I can't control the decisions that my kids make when they're older.
Yeah.
The only thing, and it comes back to the quote that I shared with you a little while ago, but it's, our job is not to save people. Our job is to live our life as an example and show people how we saved ourselves, because it's the number one thing. Like, you can't force somebody to get sober. No. It's got to come from inside of that person. And so it's really like, when you're dealing with that kind of stuff, it's like, you're almost just kind of like, okay, like, here's a support, but hopefully you make the right choice.
Right, but so friends and everything else, I don't know, we're kind of talking about kids, but your kids are right at that age right now. Mm-hmm. I don't know. What do you think about
video game crack pipe kid too?
Yeah, and dude, I could say that's probably fair to say that we're all going to have one. We were all that person, right? Like,
Yeah.
Right.
And so, and the crazy thing is my mom was that person. I think my dad, not so much, like, but I didn't know it, until, I don't know, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. And that's the thing that I think that we're going to give our kids that maybe we didn't get from our folks, and not slamming on my folks or anything like that, but like, just the communication piece of all of it. You know what I mean? And the tools. Like, I don't think my dad or my mom really ever struggled with alcohol. I don't think my dad ever did. He can turn it on and off. My mom, not so much. Like, that's where I get my addictive personality. But at the same time, like, we never talked about that. And then when I was 18 years old, they didn't drink a lot when I was growing up because we were super religious. But when I was 17, 18 years old, they started. I started riding Harleys and doing that, and like really living that lifestyle. And so, we started doing it too, and it was acceptable. And so it didn't really like permeate our family until later in life, but at the same time, like, it just happened.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and there was no explanation to it. It just was the course of life that I guess happened. And, I look at my kids now, and my daughter's 6 years old, almost 7. And I'm explaining these things to her, of like, no, like, you have a friend at school that she's not treating you the right way.
Yeah.
And you don't have to put up with that. You are a valuable person. You are a good friend. Are you treating her with respect? Yes, you are. Is she doing the same thing to you? No, she's not. Okay. And you don't need to accept that at 6 years old, and so hopefully it's like, we just tell them the truth over and remind them of who they are, and that's hopefully what will stick.
Yeah.
you know, and that was something that maybe my parents weren't equipped. Like, I'm sure that they did. I was also a very, like, you can't tell me shit kind of kid. You know, I never listened to anything my parents said, and I'm realizing that now as I like looking at my son, and I'm like, oh shit, dude, I get it now.
Yeah, well, what if we leaned into that?
That's what
I love you so much. I'm not going to let you tell me what to do. I'm not drinking that shit.
So I do. So you talked about you probably let your kids drink, right? Yeah. And I don't know how I'm going to handle that right now because I used to think I would, right? But what I do tell my kids is the only way, 1 in 3. So I have 3 kids, right? 1 in 3 of you kids is going to be an alcoholic or an addict. Right. And the only way that you don't become one is if you never put it in your system in the first place. Yep. And now we do definitely, my middle child is off the charts, ADHD, possibly autistic. And the video screen is just like, he has the isms and he is the sweetest, most loving boy, but he has all the isms and I'm terrified. My girl has the go fuck you attitude, right? Like I could see her go run off and party, but I think she's been raised around it long enough. The little one, I don't know. But we, you know, none of us are normal or preppy or anything like that, right? And my parents always wanted me to date a lawyer and a doctor and be a cheerleader and fuck that, right?
Yeah, I was all an image.
Yeah, and my kids, right? Like my daughter has green hair and red hair and baggy pants and a tight, I don't know all this stuff. And the middle kid, bless his heart, he just like does not have a social life. But I tell them, normal is a setting on the washer. There's no fucking there's no thing. Right? You know, you're going to be whoever you're going to be. And middle school and high school suck. Yeah. And these people are not going to matter in a few years. Right. So just be you and be content with who you are. And my daughter comes out last night. She's like, I look bomb in this outfit. Truthfully, I'm dating myself. And I'm like, yeah.
That's awesome. Right? I love that. Yeah.
I was like, we buy ourselves flowers. We buy ourselves coffee. Because, you know, I've been single for over a year now. And we're dating ourselves. And so at 15, she's cool with that.
That's cool.
You know, after all my years of codependency and bullshit relationships, I think she's actually kind of getting it.
Yeah.
So hopefully my kids can get on with that love themselves thing.
Yeah. You know, and I think we're doing the work right now for them, you know, by learning, educating ourselves, living this life, trying to set an example. You know, I mean, I had a good example as a kid, like I'm starting to get to that point where I don't remember it a whole lot. But, you know, what really sticks out to me is later in life, you know, and we just kind of used alcohol as this like super fun thing to do that just spiraled out of control. Yeah. You know, so let me ask you this. So you've talked about God. How does that come to play in your life?
Okay. So my variation of God, higher power, ended up being some hippy dippy pagan witchy shit.
Yeah. Nice.
It changes by the day, right? It's, I don't want to give it one face or one name, or I don't even want to say one God, right? Yeah. I have gods plural. So when I decided I really needed a higher power, and that was like my big, huge dilemma, and that's why I had relapsed and was still doing the same bullshit. I'm looking around and everybody else in the room has basically got Sky Daddy, Jesus, Christian-based, you know, thing, and I'm like, I can't do it. I can't do it. I'm sorry. And I was watching Vikings, right? And I'm watching this series. I know that was so awesome. I watched it like 3 times. But I'm also learning about my heritage. I did Ancestry.com, and I was like, oh, I got some Norse in me. All right, cool. And so I'm like, well, I can get on board with this, right? Because pagan really just means plural, right? More than one God, okay? And most every, I don't know, country, nation, whatever, was pagan, right? The Egyptians, the Greeks, the Norse, everybody was pagan until Christianity came around, right? So it was like kind of the original of believing in several gods, and typically they were based off of something that had to do with nature, right? I love nature. Yeah. I love being outside. And so this kind of got me on this little deal of, okay, well, this is the direction I'm going to go. And then, like I had always kind of dabbled in some witchy shit. You know, you make potions as a little kid, you cast a little hex,
play with the Ouija board,
you know, doing whatever. And I'm like, you know, I've always killed my plants, and usually because I would throw them at people. But I had made this decision. Hold on, I did. I would grow plants and I would kill them by throwing them at people. But I put all these plants. I got this cool stand, and I'm like, okay, as of today, I am a green witch, and these plants are going to survive. And like, I so mowed it, right? And like, I am going to call upon whatever it is in the universe that gives me my power and sets me in the right direction. And we're on this new path. And so I just kind of grabbed this little witchy shit over here, and I grabbed this Norse paganism shit over here, and a little bit over this. And it's called eclectic, right? Yeah. So in witchcraft, you can be an eclectic witch, which means you take a little piece of everything. And that's what I did. So there's even some Christianity and some Buddhism and whatever I need that day. Yeah. Right? It's just being a good person, and I feel most connected outside.
Yeah. You know, and that's so funny. I was talking about spirituality with somebody, and, you know, I mean, he's like, dude, it's just hard. Like, there's just no proof. And I'm like, I get that. You know, I mean, that's why they call us believers and not knowers, you know. But I love that fabric that connects the world. You know, like there is something real there and palpable, you know, and that's, yeah, me too, you know, and it's like, that's the thing that I think makes alcoholics and recovering drug addicts like so special, is they're tapped into that. Yeah. You know what I mean? And it's like, you have to operate your life from that level. And that's the same thing for me, dude. Like, if I don't pray in the morning for my kids, for my family, like it's my mindset shit. I'm in a bad mood, you know? And it's just like, when I do all of that stuff and I go through that practice of praying and inviting God into my day and all of that stuff, you know, it's just, it sets the tone. Yeah. Right. And it's my mindset. And it's just like, that's that fabric, you know, the universe. And I don't know if God is real, but what I do know is real is that when I don't do it, my day is shitty. When I do it, my day is awesome, you know, and then I get the opportunity to pour into other people. You know, and it's like when you have that positive mindset, it's just nothing gets in your way. You know, and it's so awesome, dude. Like that's why I love working at a car dealership, because I just get to interact with so many people on a daily basis, you know, and you have so many opportunities to speak life into people. And it's amazing. You know, it's a really, really awesome opportunity. And that's the piece of it too. It's like my mental clarity mixed with that is almost the new addiction.
Right.
You know what I mean? Yeah. And it's just like, I love breaking that situation down, or like looking at that person and being like, okay, how can I plug into their life? You know, and that energizes me in such a crazy way. Yeah. So
next time somebody says there's no proof, okay? So I read some paganism recovery books, right? Go outside. It's on a windy day. Tell the wind to stop blowing. Yeah. Does it? Nope. No. Go stand in a creek that's flowing, right? Tell it to stop flowing. Does it? No. Okay, so obviously you're not God, and there's something bigger than you. Yeah. Period. Exactly. Right? And that's how simple it had to be for me. Yeah. Right? I'm a taste it, touch it, feel it kind of person, right? And I was so agnostic. There's no such thing. You know, that was the proof that I needed. Is that it sure as hell wasn't me.
Well, and it's hard to put that into words, because it's the most intense feeling. You know, when you feel that presence of God, whatever it is, the universe, it's so real, dude. Like, and that's the proof, right? Like, that's where I'm like, oh my God, I'm connected right now. And
I had to learn to be connected, though. I really had to learn. I did probably 10 sets of 12 steps in the last 12 years. Yeah. I have redone the steps almost every single year. I'm that slowly hard-headed son of a bitch that I swear to God, my first higher power, when I had a list, had a 2x4 to hit me with, right? And so like all my sponsors have had that 2x4 because I've needed it. Yeah. But it really, I had to learn, and I had to learn the hard way, but I was willing to keep doing the work because I knew there was something here.
So what was it that flipped that? Was it a situation? You know, was it just the consistency and seeing how your life was changing? You know what I'm saying? Like, was it one moment, or was it just this like consistent level of like, I'm going to just go this direction no matter what?
Both.
Yeah.
So there was the consistency for one, right? The slow, tiny little bits of watching my life change and get better.
Right.
But there was also those moments. So remember how I told you I dropped to my knees that morning and I prayed to this God. I didn't believe it, and I never had another drink. Okay. I didn't know that was a burning bush God moment at the time. And I didn't know it for years later because I'm blind and oblivious.
Right.
Damn it, that was one of them. But there's been other situations where, like, oh my God, I'm $48,000 in debt, and what the hell? God, please help me. shit happens and everything in an instant turns. And I'm like,
whoa. Yeah.
Like, seriously? Or even just like, page 552, praying for a person that you absolutely just want to choke the shit out of, right? You pray for this person for 2 weeks and you have this entire mindset shift. There's definitely something about the prayer and the higher power and the consistency and the teeny tiny little burning bush moments that I have that I don't see right away.
Right.
But mostly how much things have changed.
Yeah.
I
know. And it's like you get so focused on, well, at least for me, I got so focused on just doing the right next thing.
Yeah.
That it was like, I just honed in on that. And then, you look back after a year and you're like, holy shit. Like, number one, I remembered what happened 2 weeks ago when my wife asked me this question. It's like I knew exactly what she was talking about. So you start to look back and see those small wins, right? Or you look back and you're like, oh my God, like this was such a difficult situation that we managed very well, or we came up with this amazing plan. Like, dude, our life fell apart over the last 18 months. Like, I drank us into a severe hole financially. And I'm grateful for it because it's taught us these financial skills that we need, that we never learned. And that's the thing. Like, we're just like, okay, like this is where we're at and we're just going to plug into this and do everything that we can and do the next right thing, And so it's 18 months into this, 16 months into this, we're finally starting to see the benefits from those decisions, But yeah, for me, it's different, right? Like I was raised in church. I always believed in God. Like, no matter what, I believed that Jesus died on the cross, and I always had that. But it was still hard for me to accept it, right? Because there's this thing of like, dude, seriously, like, let's go break this down. This is crazy. The whole idea of Christianity and God coming back and dying on the cross, it's kind of a fairy tale, and I get that, but it was the consistency, right? It was tapping into that, like, all of this shit over here is not working.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that. So I'm just going to try this and I'm going to plug into it and see what happens, and then it does. It just slowly starts to compound.
Yeah.
But so what are you up to these days? Working?
Yeah, I work. I have a full-time job. I've had the same job for over 11 years now.
Good for you.
Actually, the last 2 jobs, I had one for 8 years and this one for 11 years. And that's definitely due to sobriety.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it was like every year I had a different job for, my whole life. I can drive a company vehicle at all times, and that's okay. I don't have to worry about a drug test.
Yeah, right.
I actually drive for a living. I'm in outside sales, so I drive around and I talk shit to old men at manufacturing facilities.
Nice.
And I love it.
Yeah.
Like, I was this grunt blue collar worker in factories for a good majority of my life. And they offered me this outside sales position. And I was like, oh, I hate people. Well, that's where I started getting really good at talking to people. If I'm passionate about what I'm talking about, I'm good and I enjoy myself. So I get to listen to music, drive around, socialize with people who have now become friends because we've been working together for 11 years. And I get to use my expertise as this grunt factory worker over here in the sales end of things. But
what do you sell?
Cutting tools for CNC manufacturing.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so mills and lathes and stuff like that. I was a welder and a machinist and did all kinds of cool stuff like that.
Dude, I love that stuff. Like, one of my dreams is to have a wood shop.
Yeah.
I love it. Like, just working on a lathe, and I want big old table saw, all of it, dude. Vertical bandsaw, like, yeah, I love that stuff.
As a machinist, kind of like everything else, is it a dying trade?
Yeah. It really is.
Sucks.
Like, things are getting automated. The kids aren't learning. Like, I never even learned how to run a manual lathe or a mill or grind my own tools. Like, so it was the generation before me that is actually dying with.
Yeah.
So now everything is automated and computerized. And they're even doing.
I think there's I used to do a construction labor support. Temp labor, basically. I was on the sales side of it. And if we had a CNC machinist or a mason, like that person would never come back to us, because they'd always be out working. So I feel like masonry was one of the biggest dying trades, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But
you still got quite a few welders.
Yeah.
The die cast operators, you got to be niche. Like I was real lucky to be living in Illinois when I was, doing all my, early job stuff.
yeah,
Because there's a lot of manufacturing out there. So I had my pick of it, and I did die cast and I did plating, welding, and then got into machining. I really do love it. I was great at it, right?
Yeah.
Like you give me some metal in my hands and my little twitty brain, and I could trig something out, and voila.
Yeah, I love that.
it's so much better than just sitting in a damn office.
Oh,
Like
dude, I
everybody
can't.
just wants to be at home now and have your recharge days. Have you heard about this new recharge days thing?
Isn't that like what the weekend's for?
Mental
Oh,
health
you'd
day?
think, bro. You'd think. But no, now that they're making everybody go back to the office, these people are needing recharge days because they, well, I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't know enough to speak, but I heard it and I'm like, yeah, it's just.
Well, it's just, I don't know. I think the world might be losing a little bit of grit.
Well, so I'll have to say, right? Like, so Thursdays are a home office day, right? Why is that? Because I'm a chronic pain person, right? So I have 3 kids. I'm a single mom. I'm chronic pain. I'm in pain every single day of my life. I can't work 5 days a week anymore. Is it because I'm losing grit, or is it because I'm getting old?
Okay, there's a difference, though. You've been working with your hands for a long time. I'm talking these people that are in front of a computer all day and they don't want to go back in the office. So then they talked about, I need a day to recharge.
Well, and
that's what I'm talking about.
I don't know, dude. You introduce something like social isolation.
Yeah.
You change the world. Like,
Yeah.
period.
It did, absolutely.
And you change that dynamic. You give people that option of like, oh, I'm going to work from home. Like, you're going to get a bunch of pushback. I mean, it makes sense, but at the same time, like, I do think it is a little stupid.
Yeah. I mean, I could have more compassion for people that are not as mentally tough. But at the same time, I'm like, you get a lot tougher if you toughen up.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
That's that old Gen X mentality.
Exactly, right? I know. And that's why I'm excited for our generation to kind of like start taking over shit, because we still have like a good mix of like the older, but we also understand the younger generation. So,
well, related to sobriety, you can make excuses all day long. Just go back to the old habits.
Right. And I see that all the time with all the people that I talk to. So like my sobriety isn't just in like this town. And it's not just in the 3 towns surrounding us. Right. Like mine is throughout the state and even over into another state. Like I connect with so many people, and a lot of it has to do with I ride with a recovery group, right? And so I talk to all these different people and I hear all these different excuses. And I'm like, okay, cool. You came to me with an excuse. You have a problem. We'll talk about it this time. You come back to me with the same excuse. You better have some sort of solution, right? Otherwise it's pour me another drink.
Right.
Yeah.
And I learned that a long time. Like when I was in the rooms at 15 years old, it was the dirty old smoky rooms with the couches and only the old white guys. And they're like, take the cotton out.
Stop being a bitch.
Yeah, pretty much. Fucking sit up, shut up, you're going to die.
Well, yeah, exactly. That's the kind of group I went to too. And I don't know. I mean, it's helpful.
I think we still need some of that. I mean,
well, it's honesty, right? It's telling the truth, which at times is not an easy thing to do because it's hard, right? Like I was watching this Nate Bargatze clip and the fucking guy's hilarious, but he was like, how do I, like, my wife, our bedtime routine is like, she will lay on my lap for like an hour, watch shows. She'll go to bed at like 11. I'll stay up till 2. Well, what she started doing recently is bringing her pillow down and like laying down with him. And he does it. He's like, wow, I really don't like this. Like he wants he's like, how do I tell my wife that, like, you're the one person that I love the most, but right now you're the one person that I don't want to be around.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it's hard, it's hard to tell people the truth. And I see it all the time. People skirt around it, and what good does that do?
Well, because everybody wants the truth until the truth is pointed at them.
Well, and it just softens everything up.
It does.
And it's like, when as a society did we start thinking like, oh, okay, like, let's just make sure this guy feels okay?
Yeah, hurt feelings.
Fuck that. Are you serious right now? Like, what? Not only are you damaging this person, but like, you're damaging yourself. Like, how can you not sit there? If this person's not doing what they need to do, they need to hear that.
Yeah.
Somebody needs to have the nuts to be like, dude, if you want X out of life, like you can't do this. It needs to be this way. How else are we supposed to learn?
That's so hard. I'm dealing with something right now in my work that they're being really nice to each other, and it could potentially hurt someone so bad down the road.
And that's like,
like right now, yeah, it's nice and it's all good, but I'm in the middle of it trying to be like, this is so much better for you if you just rip the Band-Aid off and do it this way.
Well, there's like a little line, and I'm going to hack it all up, but it's in recovery, and it's if an active addict is happy with you, then you're probably not being honest with them.
Yep.
That's basically where it goes, right?
Yep.
So you're not telling them the things that they need to hear, so they're going to keep on doing the things that they're not supposed to be doing, right? And it's just going to end their life in the long run.
And at the end of the day, it was like when I relapsed, and it was like, okay, I'm going to be honest about this relapse. Like I did this because I'm drunk, because I'm an alcoholic. Yeah. That's obvious. That's a fact, right? Boom. Okay, now let's move on, right? How do we fix it? What's the solution? And I notice it in some of my relationships. A lot of times all we talk about is the problem, and it's like, great. Like we've identified the problem 25 different ways and we have zero solutions to it, and that I think getting from the problem to the solution requires that level of honesty. Like, hey, you're fucking this up, or I'm fucking this up, and then you got to take some personal accountability inside of that.
Well, that's where you need certain people in your life.
Right.
I'm fully on board with this. I have this best friend who will pat me on the ass, tell me it's okay, and then tell me to go out there and get it fucking done.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? She will kick me in the ass, tell me I'm being, an idiot, and will be 100% honest. And I'll be like, I hate you today,
right.
And then I'll come back and be like, you were totally 100% right.
Dude, and that's the thing. It's like the dichotomy between your emotions and your mind.
Oh, God.
It's insane. And I'm trying to teach my 4-year-old that, like, dude, just because you feel that way doesn't mean that you can go punch this dude in the face.
Yeah.
Like that's not how this works. You need to stop, think, okay, if I hit this guy, what's going to happen?
Yeah.
And so it's just, it's crazy. But I think as a society, we've just trained ourselves to avoid that shit.
Yes. Nobody wants to look at the reality of the situation. They want the easier, softer way.
And then they just complain and bitch when things don't go their way instead of doing something about it.
Yeah.
And that's, not to toot our own horns, but I guess kind of a little bit like that's where this podcast came from. One of my best friends died, and it was just like, I'm so done sitting on the sideline and just accepting what happens to me.
Yeah.
Like that's not going to happen anymore. I'm going to take control of my life, make these decisions, live with a little bit of grit, and go pour back into the world and do everything that I can to sow positivity, to sow whatever, to bring light to sobriety, to help people understand that like, hey, this is not fully in our control at some point.
Right.
You know what I mean? It gets to a point where we kind of lose control of what's going on, and people need to understand that, and I think the whole world looks at this group of people as like, hey, fuck that, but it's like, dude, you start to uncover that and peel the layers of the onion back. Holy shit. I have met some of the most insanely powerful people through sobriety.
Absolutely.
That are wanting to pour back into life and are wanting to pour into people, and really help people. And that's what it's all about.
We have seen the depths of hell.
Exactly.
Most of us in the rooms of recovery have seen the depths of hell. We can see how horrible it can be. And I think that's what gives us the push to be good, do good, spread the positivity, is we don't ever want to go back to that shit. Yeah. It was horrible. Yeah. And a lot of people out there in the world never see how nasty, dirty, ugly it really is. And I think that's why they float along and they're just little happy little bubbles, right? Nothing I've ever done or have received has come easy in my life. Yeah. Everything has been a struggle since day one. But you know what? I wouldn't be where I'm at today had it not been that way. Yeah. If I would have been that little fancy little cheerleader, silver spoon fed, whatever, given everything, I wouldn't have had the grit to be able to overcome all the shit that I have been able to.
Yeah.
Right? Like I wouldn't be able to provide to my kids what I am able to provide to them. And I think recovery is a great proof of that, because I have to keep on doing this shit every day, whether I want to or not. Right? It would be so easy just to check out and disappear and go back to the old ways of life. But how many people would that wreck right? It's kind of like suicide.
Totally.
Like how many other people hurt? You don't hurt anymore, right? But everybody else does.
And it's that ripple effect
Yeah.
of life, you know what I mean? And it's like, what kind of ripples do you want to send out into the world?
Damn good ones.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, for sure.
Like this is, if I can do this, you can do this, right? It is possible. We don't have to continue to live in that life where it's all about, the booze commercials, because it's never that fun. We're not at the beach fucking playing sand volleyball. We're shit-faced drunk eating the dirt, right? I mean, come on, let's be real, right?
Yeah.
Let's show a commercial of you shitting yourself the next morning. Let's be real.
Dude, could you imagine that?
Well, you never did that?
Can we please make our own commercial? That would be fucking
So you get this new
awesome.
medication and they list out all the side effects afterwards.
Yeah, dude, and it's just like,
let's do that after the alcohol.
You might get arrested. you might die. You might end up here. Dude, that would be hilarious.
I think if you put anal leakage on the bottle, I think that would make a difference. I don't know. It's just me. But.
My God, the visuals running through my brain right now. Oh, that's so funny. Well, dude, we always ask this and we're kind of getting to the end, unless there's something else that you really want to make sure that you add into your story.
Sponsorship.
Yeah.
I really want to talk about sponsorship.
Okay, let's talk about
it. I hated the phone. I hated reaching out. I hated asking for help. I had way too much pride.
I was going to say why.
Pride and ego, pride and ego, pride and ego. I was raised that way. It was pride and ego. You do it on your own. You do it by yourself. You don't tell anybody shit. And so sponsor after sponsor after sponsor has poured into me and reached out to me and done nothing but love me and try to help me grow. I don't know if I'd be here, if it wasn't for all these sponsors that I've had. And I've had several sponsors because of either moving or whatever else. But, I have not had one shit sponsor. I've been a shit sponsee.
Yeah.
I have not had one shit sponsor. And then sponsoring other women for me really kept me in the book and really kept me repeating the steps, even if I wasn't working them with my sponsor, and really made me get out of my egotistical self and to actually learn how to give back to the world.
Dude, there's a huge thing in there, right? You had accountability to your sponsee, right? You're like, okay, maybe I'm not applying this for my life, but you're in it. And that's all that matters.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't go to AA anymore. This is what we do, and this is how we're connected. I was saying, like, you had that piece of accountability to somebody else.
Yeah.
Right. And that's a perfect example of living outside of yourself, right? You're setting up things in your life that require you to stay connected to sobriety, to the AA book, whatever. And that's, I think, the number one thing that we need to do as we get out of rehab. That's one thing that I think rehab needs to do a better job of, is setting people up for success post rehab, getting people more connected to, dude, and there's thousands of avenues to go down with this. If you guys are looking to get connected, call me, because I can connect you to house builders, roofers, welders, plumbers, real estate agents, car salespeople, anything. I can connect you.
Discipline coach.
Yeah, dude. Like, if your credit's fucked, we can help you get that fixed. Like, we have so many connections through real estate, through the things that we've done, and through sobriety, man. And the thing that I love the most about it is every single one of those people is literally like on the edge, like, let's go, let's do it. I'm ready to help. Let's go. And it's such an amazing community.
I think the saddest thing to see, because I have a friend who works in recovery, I have a couple of friends that do, is they get out and they have no idea what they're going to do next.
Exactly.
And they go right back to the same shit, right? And that's why when I told you earlier that even though I was getting ready to move across the country, I already had picked out
you had
2
set
meetings.
It up. Yep.
I knew where my life was going to go, right? I had 2 options to help me stabilize my life and to go further in sobriety. And if you don't have that setup coming out of rehab, what the hell do you have besides going back on your own bullshit? Exactly.
And I think that's huge, man. Like, accountability, working with other people. This is a biblical thing, and I can't remember the names of the people, but most life coaches, people like that, are going to say, have 3 kinds of people in your life. One is somebody that speaks into you, right? Somebody that you, like a mentor, Then 2 is somebody that's on the same level, somebody that you can compare notes with, right? Like, hey, this is what I'm going through. Hey, that'd be like me and Aaron.
Yeah.
And then you have somebody that you pour into, that you're bringing up, right? And that serves all 3 aspects of our soul, right? Like, we're getting educated, we're having camaraderie with the people that are right there with us. They know where we're at. So there's that accountability piece. And then we're pouring into somebody that's maybe a few steps behind us, right? And that kind of helps you feel like a leader, like you're helping somebody, you're leading. And so it serves all of these areas of your soul, but it requires true, honest connection.
Absolutely.
And so that's huge. I'm really glad that you brought that up.
Is alcohol the real gateway drug?
No, trauma.
Boom.
Expand.
Not all.
Fuck.
Most of us that I have found so far have trauma. Not all. Let me repeat that. Not all. But most of us have some sort of trauma that we are hiding from, running away from. And I think that's why we start drinking and drugging. And that is most definitely what keeps us drinking and drugging.
I agree with you, actually.
That's the reason I ask is I'm heard a few things lately, and it's it was alcohol, or they're talking about weed. It was something to do with Windsor was had it on the ballot to bring in recreational weed to Windsor, and heard these folks talking about it, and it got me a lot of thoughts going. I don't give a shit one way or another, but I just disagree that weed is a gateway drug.
Well, I think it used to be alcohol, basically because weed used to be illegal, right? And so alcohol was the legal thing that was in stores, and it was readily available for the most part. It was in everybody's house. And so that's why alcohol, I think, was always the gateway drug. And now that's changing with weed because it's becoming legalized, but then so are a lot of other drugs. They're becoming so much more accessible.
Right.
So is it really the drug's fault, or are we running away towards something in the first fucking place?
Okay, well, yes, it's definitely the person and no accountability.
And
without
that's
a doubt.
That's where I agree with you. It could be anything, dude. It could be porn. It could be food. It could be whatever, man. Like it doesn't matter.
Relationships.
What I think, I heard this somewhere, and this hit me so hard. But things happen to us, right? Bad things. That shit gets programmed into our subconscious. Yeah. And they're starting to do like scientific research on, like, are we born with fear? And the answer that I think they're finding is no, it's learned, right? Yeah. Like it's learned through negative experiences, and we program those things into our subconscious and then we forget about it. But it changes our habits, right? Now we're starting to protect ourselves from those situations, right? And that's when maybe you start to lie, or you start to do this, or, it gets overwhelming, and the ball just snowballs over time.
Well, your brain forgets about it because you can't develop memories at a certain age, right? But your body never forgets.
Exactly.
And people think of trauma as this big, huge, horrible thing. Not everybody's trauma is a big, huge, horrible thing.
And I'll never forget the moment that I remember being in detox, and I sat down with this psychiatrist in training. Like I don't even think she was like fully licensed, but it went back to like us getting spanked as kids, and it probably, like, I get why they did it. Like I spanked my kids. I think maybe it was just a little bit too far. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, so we got spanked for like not brushing our teeth, or if I lied about making my bed. And, so it was like every time we did something negative or bad, we got hit for it. Mm-hmm. Right. And so that gets programmed into your brain. And I started doing it to myself as an adult. Right. So I'm like, I've never been an outwardly violent person to other people. Not 100% true. I definitely did some bar fighting and things like that. But in my soul, it was always like I was the problem. You know what I mean? And it wasn't until it's like, dude, I broke my hand hitting dumpsters in fights with girls. Like I just couldn't control it, and so I became very self-deprecating, suicidal ideation, all of this kind of stuff. I was always the problem. And it wasn't until that moment that I was sitting in that room with this gal, and she's like, that's your trauma. Yeah. And boom, just like that, dude, I came unfucking glued. It was like everything in my life made sense.
That light turned on.
Everything. And it was just simply because of the way that I treated myself as an adult, and I will do that to my kids somehow, right? It's unfortunate. We're people, we make mistakes. We hurt people, we hurt the ones that are closest to us, but it's all part of the journey, right? And you have that choice of like, hey, am I going to be a victim or am I going to go fucking play the game?
Yep.
And I think that moment when Tyler died, I was like, dude, I'm tired of sitting on the sideline. I'm not going to be a victim anymore. I'm going to go play and I'm going to do everything that I can, and it was that moment. Like, that's what I love. That, just that moment of clarity and trauma, realizing like that was my trauma. So, and it wasn't that bad, but it was just this belief system that I didn't have what it takes.
Yeah.
And I believed that my whole life.
See, and I followed this trend of what I had learned from my dad. And so I was up here, looking over, I was better than everybody else, but at the same time, I was shit on the bottom of the shoe. So I had this multi-dimensional thing. So it was always your fucking fault, but then I would go around the corner and then I would beat myself up as well. Yeah. And so it was like always this twofold Jekyll and Hyde.
And it wasn't really until that moment that I could forgive myself.
Yeah.
Until I really saw the whole path of like, holy shit, there's my life. All because of that one thing. And there was other things along the road with abandonment issues and stuff like that, but I think really as a kid, like, that was probably the one thing that I carried out of my childhood into my adult life of like, I just never believed in myself. It was just always very negative in my mind.
But forget that pain of voice, man.
Yeah, and it was as simple as sitting in a room for 20 minutes with this gal and just having her be like, dude, you're looking at this the whole wrong way.
That's awesome.
And just saying, hey, I'm sorry that happened to you. And compassion, dude. She gave me a lot of compassion in that moment, and I didn't even know this person.
Yeah.
So it's just, don't be afraid, listener, of those conversations. Don't be afraid to tell the truth. At first, it might suck and it might hurt and it might hurt somebody's feelings. But at the end of the day, emotions are feigning. They're real, but they're not real.
Right.
And I've learned to use my emotions as a guideline instead of like, this is reality.
Yeah. If you're sitting there in terror and bewilderment and your guts are turning, you need to go talk to somebody. Absolutely.
Like, sure.
I found, you even said it yourself, talking your problems out with another human being is an amazing solution, and if you put it on pen and paper, great. Still take it to another human being. You can't figure out your own shit with your own shitty brain, right? You need a different perspective on things.
Absolutely.
Just to be able to look at life, how it is in reality and not your own perception.
Right.
That's good.
Well, we always ask this to all of our guests, but what's like the one little chunk of wisdom that you want to leave with the listener, the person that's still struggling? What would you tell them right now?
The person that's still struggling, you don't have to still be struggling, right? It's a choice at this point. You may have lost the choice in controlling the drug or the alcohol, but you have the choice of whether you're still out there struggling and make contact. You even said it yourself. There's so many of us that want to help, are dying to help, and really like to help.
Yeah.
We're there.
And there's a lot of compassion inside of that, especially here with Shattered Darkness and things like that, because it's, like I said, there's personal accountability, but at some point it becomes unmanageable.
Yeah. Okay.
And if you're in that place, just pick up the phone.
Yeah.
Call any one of us. Reach out. You can email us at shattereddarkness5@gmail.com. I'll give you my cell phone number. Hit me up on Facebook and I'll give you my cell phone number. But Kendra, I really appreciate you coming in, and your story is just raw, dude. Like, you have been through so much shit, and just to look at you right now, like, you're such a shining light, such a beautiful person.
Thank you.
And I'm very, very grateful to have you in my life. So thank you so much for taking the time to do this.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah. And you're welcome to come back anytime. So we're going to wrap up episode 20. Thank you guys so much for your support.
Yeah. Keep it rolling. Stay healthy. God bless.
All right. See you next time.